Hi everybody, I'm Brad from Big Family Homestead, and in this edition of the Homestead Nation, I and Tommy from the Carolina Prepper 7 channel are talking about homesteading stuff, all kinds of different topics, but mainly bees, honeybees. I love honeybees. I'm a beekeeper, and we just ping back and forth about all kinds of different things. Tommy asks a bunch of questions, and we chat it up. There's a ridiculous story, and I'll tell you right now, it's true. The story, you're not going to believe it, and you guys are probably going to think that I'm fibbing you, but I swear, it Scout's honor, it really happened. So anyway, sit back and relax, enjoy this edition of the Homestead Nation, and don't forget to click like and subscribe. Don't jip me, man. Don't jip me, please, bro. So anyway, Brad, enjoy the conversation. Have an amazing day.
Brad! So glad you can come by. Welcome to the show.
Anytime to come by, whatever. So great. How's it going, Tommy?
It's going well, man. I've been wanting to talk to you about something. It's been on my mind.
No, I'm married. I don't do that.
Oh, stop it, you. No, listen, I want to say this. Probably the first video that kind of brought me to your channel, it got me interested in your other videos, happened to hit me at the right time, was the one, yeah. You got the whole Abe Lincoln thing going on down there. I like it.
Cool.
But it was the bee video, the subject of your beehive and your beekeeping. And I said, you know what? I thought about doing that at one point before, and your video got me interested in it again. I watched a few more. And first off, I want to ask you this question right out of the gate. I haven't seen a honeybee all spring or summer down here. Not one.
That is a seriously huge concern. Right now, what's happening, and I actually know a lot about this just because they are a passion of mine, is there's a battle going on right now. There's a thing called CCD, which is colony collapse disorder. And scientists have a good idea what they think is happening. Nobody's really nailed it down 100%, but they think they've got the culprit because it's started to change in Europe. And basically what has happened is the bees will all of a sudden one day leave, poof, gone, dead. They're gone. They just leave and they're gone. And for the longest time, for over a decade, nobody's been able to put a fingerprint on what's doing it. And what they think the latest common knowledge, I would say, is there's a company called Bayer Crop Science, Bayer, aspirin guys. And they basically make a product it's called clothiandian, which is here comes the big 50-cent word. It's a neonicotinoid. And basically what it does, they spray this stuff on the plants, and it's supposed to target certain insects for stay away from our plants and certain insects it's not supposed to mess with. Well, come to find out, lo and behold, our government and all its wisdom went ahead and approved this stuff. Basically with Bayer saying, hey, no, it's good. We've checked it out, guys. And they start selling tons and tons and tons of it. And the testing they did was not exactly the world's best. They only have to test it a certain amount of ways and for a certain amount of time. Well, now the knowledge is that the bees, it's like allergies, where you don't just walk into a situation and poof, I am now allergic to dust. It takes a while, like a cup, like if you're filling a glass up, and then all of a sudden you get to a tipping point and now I have allergies. And so the knowledge now is that, yes, this stuff probably was tested, but not nearly what it should have been. And there's even some, let's just say there's debate whether or not they knew about it, and they approved it anyway. I'm
sure that's not the case.
Well, yeah, no, there's never money involved in any of this. And, the good news is that our current administration has gotten rid of all of lobbyists. That was 7 years ago. There are no more lobbyists in Washington, so this cannot be tied to money in any way, even though there's high-level people that go back and forth between these companies and then lawmakers. But, yeah, that's a whole other story.
Listen, I'm absolutely sure they'll work it all out at the Bilderberg meetings this week. I'm sure of it.
Wow. Yeah. No, the thing that's interesting is that there's countries in Europe that have started banning this product, and their honeybee populations are coming back.
Okay. So really, right now, it's looking like it's all pointing to this one product that's killing off the bee population.
Yeah.
Because I heard 40%. I heard there's been a 40% reduction in the bee population. That's huge.
And I'll tell you what, from a beekeeper standpoint, it's rough, man. Last season, I had 20 hives going. And by the time I got out of the season, and I'm not the greatest beekeeper, I'm not going to claim to be a pro at anything really, but we ended up with 2 left, 20 to 2.
Out of
20.
Wow. All right, so 20 to 2.
Yeah.
That's an enormous destruction right there. Now, do you guys, is that product that we were talking about from Bear, is that in heavy use out where you are, or you have no idea?
Yes, absolutely. It's on a lot of different, it's all over the country. They have metric kilos, tons of this stuff being sprayed on. The thing that's the most disturbing is that it's kind of, and I'm not making any allegations, accusations, blah, 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 blah. I'm not saying, but the data is looking like they knew. They just thought it wasn't going to be as big of a problem.
Sure. Okay. So basically, bees are responsible for the pollination of how much of our crops in this country, percentage-wise? Do you have any idea?
Well, I believe it was, and I'm paraphrasing here, but I think that Einstein said that, something to the degree that if honeybees were gone, humanity would only have like a year of life left, period.
Right.
Almost all of the pollinating crops that are, open pollinated need insects, i.e. bees, to go ahead and make sure that those things are pollinated. And I've heard anywhere from 50% all the way up to 80% of our food supply is dependent on pollination by bees. And so this is scary stuff you're talking about because, what would happen if one of two things would happen? Either just a butt truck amount of people would just die because there wouldn't be enough food, or else it would be just priced so far out of reach that you couldn't afford it. There are places in China that have used similar chemicals, and they've basically wiped out the insect populations so bad to the degree that they literally have to take a feather and they hand pollinate each individual apple or each individual peach or whatever it is that they want to grow. And once they finally start getting a little nub on it, they put it in a plastic bag and seal it up so no bug can eat it, get at it. And they're like literally $10 for an apple, $20 for an apple. And
look at that. More jobs we can farm out to China.
Well, yeah, don't get me started there. Honeybees are absolutely essential to human survival. It's just that.
Sure. Well, I'm sure Monsanto is working on something right now where they don't even need to pollinate. I'm sure there's some chemical or seed that they can put in the ground. It'll all be fine.
Yeah. I think it makes perfect sense that they should be able to, patent genes that they didn't create, that were made by God, and sell back to you. Of course, if they have my thumbnail gene patented, I should have to pay them for the privilege of healing my body. It makes perfect sense.
Well, it's all crazy. But listen, we can go down that path, but I want to get back on the bee path, okay? And I just wanted to make the point that normally, I remember as a kid being out in my yard in upstate New York, and those little white pollen flowers, I don't know what you call them. We used to call them pollen flowers, but you couldn't walk around barefoot when they were out because you were going to step on bees and get stung.
Yeah.
And now I'm walking around, I haven't seen one honeybee this whole year. And I've talked to some other people, and they said, we got a bunch over here. So I guess it's real sporadic. I haven't seen one down at my land in South Carolina or at my home here in North Carolina.
Well, it really depends on where they're spraying this stuff, wherever these industrialized farming. See, it's not just one chemical, too. You got to think about it like a vaccine, or when you watch these commercials on TV for like Plaxomatradia, it's gonna make sure that you don't have flaky skin, but you're gonna get piles and die in 80% of the cases. And then the actual, what's gonna happen to you or what could happen to you is longer in times of like 10 times over than what it's actually gonna do for you. And now you got to imagine that there are tons and tons of different kinds of chemicals being sprayed on all these different crops. And how many different ways do these companies have to cross-check them? What happens if this chemical interacts with this chemical? Right. I don't know. In terms of pharmaceutical companies, they have rules that they have to do, but I don't think they're stringent enough. And I certainly don't think that they're probably going to be as rigorous when you're dealing with bugs as humans.
No, certainly, and let's face it. These people routinely will bury information that might not go along with the company line, so they'll routinely bury that stuff. But anyway, I just want to make that point. That was a great answer, by the way. I had no idea, so I'm glad I asked. How did you get into beekeeping? Like, what was the deal behind that?
Well, okay, here's the 401. I talked a little bit about this before, but honestly, beekeeping was my foray into anything homesteading, prepping, gardening, anything at all. I was never interested in any of this. I was in a band and recording studios, guitars, at home recording, making music, producing stuff, technology. That's all I was ever interested in. And one day, I honestly don't know what it was, but I literally remember sitting there going, I wonder what it would be like to be a beekeeper. That's it. It was literally just like that. And then I was like, I told my wife, and she goes, beekeeper? What?
Wait, well, she was the one that wanted the chicken, so I mean,
that was later. The bees came first.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and so I went and took a class, and where we're at, we live kind of in the tri-state area. For you Phineas and Ferb fans out there, the tri-state area. But in Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana, and there's a museum right there in the corner. It's like a creation museum, and they give classes on all this kind of stuff. So I went there and took a class with about 40 other people, learned a truckload about bees, and bought some stuff, and then that was honestly it. It was just, I think this would be cool to get into. Poof, and it was. I'll tell you what, and I don't want to get like crazy religious about anything, but I'll tell you, for me personally, the more I know about honeybees, the more I am absolutely 100% certain that there is a creator God who has absolutely woven everything together with a precision that we will never understand. For example, honeybees, if they go out and they find a resource, found water, they will basically, we don't know exactly how they do it, but they can geolocate precise to the inch. Geolocate, bam, 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 wherever they're at. They come back to the hive and they do this thing that's called a waggle dance. What they do is they'll get in their hive and they start just scooting around. And by doing that, all of the other bees now know, poof, I know where that water is. I could go get it if I need it.
He basically gives them coordinates.
Exactly. And it doesn't matter what
that dance.
It does not matter what season it is. It doesn't matter what's going on. They just know. It's ridiculous, man. You know, I'll tell you what, though, it's probably not the best thing in the world to be a male bee because you think, oh, man, they're out working. No. 99% of the hive, well, not 99%, but most of the hive is all females. All of the bees you ever saw flying around, most chances are females. They're the worker bees. There's only a very small amount of the bees that are in a hive, about 100 for a big hive, that are males. The queen's a female. All the workers are female. Now, get this, okay? This is like fatal attraction kind of stuff. Because basically, all that the males ever do is they mate with the queen. They don't work. They're fed. The girls feed them, and they mate with the queen. That's it. That's your job. Bam, done. However, there is a slightly darker side to that. When fall comes, they're chased out of the hive to die. The end. They're only used for a short amount of time. You're done. Bam.
You can't have your cake and eat it too, I guess, huh?
Well, apparently not. Bees are absolutely amazing creatures. And, I mean, there's so much stuff that you can do with them. Now from a homesteading, prepping perspective, honey, obviously, did you know that honey never spoils? It's one of the foods that will never, ever, ever spoil. They found honey in tombs that it's still edible.
Yeah.
You know, if you just keep the moisture.
How many thousands of years later?
Yeah, it's kind of like perfect food. And besides, you can do so much with honey. It's a high-calorie food. It's just amazing stuff. The wax you can make candles with. You can do all kinds of different lip balms and all kinds of stuff you can sell and make. There's a thing inside the hives that's called propolis, and it basically is the glue. They glue everything together. But this stuff, you can scrape it off. It's like a crusty, yellow-looking stuff, and you can make it into a tincture that heals your wounds like about 300 times faster. So you get a cut on your arm, you put some of this stuff in there, and it heals up just like that. Has natural antibacterial properties, and it's just amazing. They're rock and roll, man. They're like the Black Sabbath of the 70s, rock and roll. Bees, 70s.
So it's like way better than Neosporin, right?
I would not ever use that stuff. Not again.
Yeah.
No.
So, all right. How much does local honey sell for up where you're at per pound?
Right now, where I'm at, if you go into like say a Whole Foods, which is kind of like a boutique organic store, you're going to pay $10 a pound or more. If you're buying,
how much are you going to pay on the roadside?
$8 a pound.
Okay.
Now keep in mind, for those who are just even mildly interested in thinking about this, if you've got a nice successful hive, you're going to get between 60 and 100 pounds of honey per hive every year.
Now, how many of those boxes are considered a hive?
As many as you go. You could have 50,000, 80,000 bees in a hive. Basically what it is you've got the bottom one is kind of, they call it a brood box, because that's where the queen's going to start making the babies, making the eggs. And then you might, depending on how big you want your hive to go, you may do another brood box. And then you have, like when you've decided how big you want your colony to go, you'll put what's called an excluder, which means the queen bee is bigger than the littler ones. So she can't get through there to make babies up in where you're going to want to harvest your honey. So then you start to stack them up, keep going. If they're doing it, you let them go.
Okay.
You've got to make sure there are the levels. You can't take more honey from them than they can. They've got to make it through the winter, or else you're just stupid and you just killed off your hive.
So when you start out with the first brooder box, how many bees do you put into that?
Well, there's several different ways you can do it, and this was something that I thought was just crazy interesting, and I was blown away. You can buy bees from mail order companies, and it will be delivered to your post office. They literally have a box of bees. It comes in something about like the size of a small lunch box, right? And there's a can inside it that's filled with syrup, sugar syrup.
Uh-huh.
And then it's like got vented screens, and then there's bees, just a massive bees, like pound of bees. You want 2 pounds of bees? How many? You can weigh them out, whatever. And then there's a little queen inside a little box that's got a hole plugged in it with a marshmallow in it. And the reason for that is because bees, the bees know the pheromones of their queen, and they will typically, when you're buying these things, they'll stick a new queen in there. And if these bees go, who the heck are you? They'll kill her. So by the time it takes them to eat through that marshmallow, they know her and have accepted her as their queen.
Wow.
Yeah, and I
had no idea.
Well, and you can buy bees in what are called nukes, like nucleus, where you get buy a box, and then there's a few frames that have honey and brood and bees all over them, and then that's the fastest way to get them started if you're not buying a complete hive, because then they're past the curve. They're not going to starve. There's no chance of them not, unless something really weird happened and you get a disease or something. But now a nucleus, that's going to cost you more than a box of bees. Sure. There are farmers who will sell complete hives, but it's very rare.
So how much does it cost to get started? And you just mentioned that there's several different ways you can go about it. So give me the 411 on if we just wanted to start out with our own brood box, or if we wanted to buy a nuke. Okay.
Well, now here's the thing. There are levels of comfort in starting beekeeping, and what I mean by that is you got to have certain protective equipment. If you've never done this before, I would not recommend you going out there like the old timers who don't wear anything. They may have a veil. That's it. And there's nothing on their skin. Those guys just get in there, bam, bam, bam. The bees don't mess with them. They just know how to do it. I went for the full suit. I went for the leather gloves, the whole thing, because I didn't know what I was getting into. So when I first started, I bought 2 hives, which was a brood box and a honey super. All the stuff that goes with it. You got to have a hive tool, which is basically like a metal, thing to pry stuff apart, scrape things off, because the bees are going to build in weird ways, and you have to correct them to your way, which is kind of funny to say. I mean, it's nature or whatever. Why am I correcting them? Whatever. But I want them to make honey. So I also needed what's called a honey extractor. I mean, you don't have to have that when you start out, because there are plenty of bee clubs everywhere you go, any neck of the woods in the United States and all over the world, and they're just a bunch of beekeepers, and usually there's a few guys who have these big honey extractors, and what that means is when you go to extract your honey, when you go to harvest it, you scrape the cells open on the frames, and that opens up the honey. So it's dribbling, and then it's in a big centrifuge, and it flings it. It flings the honey out, and then that way it goes funneling down, and you can collect it that way. But now to answer your question, I personally bought 2 hives. I bought my suit. I bought the basic things like a smoker. You need a bee smoker. It calms them down. And I say I spent about $400 on all of that. Then on top of that, you can choose whether you want to do a box of bees, a pound of bees, a nucleus. Nukes are about $100, $120. Box of bees is about $80, $70. I don't know how much complete hives are, because I've never found anyone who will sell me one. So looking at about $500, you know.
Now I see on Craigslist all the time, because I troll the Craigslist free section, and I saw something this year. I'm sure it's been there for years, but I see people that are advertising, hey, I'll come take your swarms from you. If you got bee problems, I'm your guy. So there's people out there that this is their business, I guess, or at least a second job, where they'll go out if somebody has a hive somewhere, you want to get rid of it, don't kill them, I'll come take them.
Absolutely. And here's something that's very interesting that most people who are not beekeepers do not know. When a bee hive will swarm, what happens is something in the queen bee's mind says, we're running out of space here, we got to get out of here. And so what she'll do is she'll take up to half or more of the hive with her. They'll gorge themselves on honey, so they feed themselves as much as they can, and they go, all right, let's go find a new home. Time to find new digs. And the interesting thing is, so if you see like a big old pile of bees hanging onto a tree or something like that, they have swarmed. Now, the interesting thing about that is the time that they are the absolute most docile. You could stick your hand straight in there, like into them, like that, and they won't mess with you as long as you're being gentle. They will not mess with you. Is it just because
they're so full?
Are
they just on like a honey hive?
Kind of think of it like it's Thanksgiving feast. You just ate 5 times too much, and you're on the couch. Just leave me alone.
It's kind of like you. It's kind of like you after 5 Milwaukee's Best Ice.
I don't know what you're talking about, but I would say that would be a good representation. Yeah, basically you're fat and happy, and as long as you're not posing a threat to them, I've seen guys take them and literally just pile them into a box. Most of the time you can just like flip off the branch and just stick them in a box, and now poof, you just saved yourself $100 in a beehive because you've got an active queen.
Is the queen? Okay, the queen's in there then, so the rest of the workers are surrounding the queen.
You got it.
Okay. How often? 2 questions here that come to mind. Number one, you said the bottom where the queen lays eggs is called the brood box, and you could have several brood boxes. Then it's the honey.
Go ahead.
Okay. Then it's the honey supera.
Supers, like you're a super guy. Supers.
Okay, all right. So how many of those do you want?
As much as you got, man. I've seen guys that have hives taller than I stand.
Okay.
Yeah, and what can happen though is like if you see yourself getting out of control, you can kind of basically go, all right, I'm going to take 2 or 3 supers off of here, and I'm going to go ahead and harvest them, even though it's not, because they call it a honey flow. You get a honey flow in the spring, and then you get a honey flow in the fall, where they're out there and they're gathering all the pollen from all the plants, and they're making honey like crazy. So they'll have an excess. They don't know that they're going to be sharing. So they just try to fill up everything. So, but you can monitor and you get to know, all right, this is going to be enough for them to get through, and I don't want to take any more than they're absolutely going to need, because that's like shooting yourself in the foot. That's stupid. Kill your hive for 10 extra pounds, 20 extra pounds of honey. So, but yeah, no, there's a honey flow twice a year, and you just got to kind of monitor it.
So twice a year is when you're harvesting the honey?
Yes. Now, if you're a new beekeeper, you won't probably be harvesting in the spring, and maybe in the fall you'll get a little bit for the first year, because you really want to build that colony up to a point where nothing's going to jack with it. I mean, because wasps are bad. Giant wasps, only a couple of them will get in there and decimate an entire colony.
How do you stop them from getting in? Do you have the holes a certain size?
Well, there are certain things you can do. There's called entrance reducers, which, if you've seen the beehives, the whole thing is open. Now, that's if you've got a really active hive, lots of bees, they're going to be able to defend themselves. But if not, let's say it's getting closer to winter, mice can get up inside those things, and they'll just make a home and kill everything. It's not good. So you can put these things on that basically reduce the size of the opening so that they can defend themselves, and nothing's going to get in there without at least them having a good shot at killing them.
Okay. All right. So what else do you use to supplement their feeding with? I mean, I've seen people use like sugar water, and I've seen you with the bags.
Yep.
The bags?
Absolutely. There's several ways you can do that. Like if you know that your bees don't have enough honey, you can actually make a syrup. It's just water and sugar, and there are different ways that you can do it. I've seen like little trough things that will sit on top of the hives, or there's like mason jars that have a little tray that they can go in there and get that sugar water, or some people even make what they call candy boards, which is basically sugar with only a little bit of water, so it's like hard, like a big piece of candy, and you can sit that in there. And I personally try to shy away from that, mainly just because that's not what they're eating in nature, and I only will use that in a desperate time where I'm like, oh my gosh, these guys aren't going to make it. Because I mean, think about it. If you just ate junk food all the days, you would get sick. You would, and it's no different with them. They're not used to eating that. I mean, it'll get them through, but it's not something you want to make a habit of if you can avoid it.
Okay, well, so twice a year, is that really the only time that they make the honey, or are they constantly making honey? It's just twice a year they make a ton of it. No,
they're making honey constantly. The only thing is that generally you don't want to take more than they need, and that's why there are honey flows. They're peak seasons, and they don't stop making it. But the thing is that they you don't want to take it from them when they're not going to have enough to provide from themselves. So when those seasons are going, that's when you're like, okay, I can skim off 40, 50 pounds here, and it's not going to hurt them.
All right. So during the winter, what happens to the hive? I mean, there's no flowers out. What are they doing?
They eat enough and they chill out. It's really, really cool. This is another one of those cool things about bees. They keep a constant temperature inside the hive all the time. What is it? The craziest thing. And of course, I knew you were going to ask that, and I forgot. I want to say it's like 85 degrees, and man, I'm going to look like a dork. But you beekeepers, don't be mad at me. I forgot. But basically, it's warm. It's nice and warm in there. But basically, they will get into like a ball. Like they'll get into a ball, and they'll bat their wings or vibrate. Or they basically keep themselves warm or cool based on those needs, but it stays at a constant temperature all the time. Now, if you live in a very, very cold area, you can help them out by wrapping, their hives in some kind of insulative material. But if you live, say, in a Carolina, you probably don't need to do much of anything. Just keep snow off of it if you can. They do the rest. They'll stay inside that hive until they get a good, a mild day, and they go out and take their what they call cleansing flight. So they go and use the bathroom, because they won't use the bathroom inside the hive at all. They never do.
No. Wow. I wish I could teach my dog how to do that.
How about that for kids on long trips? We're not a cleansing rest area yet.
So I've heard a ton of information about how awesome in the health benefits to honey. You mentioned all the different products and stuff you can do. Let's talk about wax. That's something my daughter's really into. I've bought wax for the first time in my life about a year ago, and subsequently a few times since. She loved, it's expensive, and she loves making balms and all different kinds of stuff with this wax. How much wax can you get out of a healthy hive? You said 60 to 80 pounds of honey. How much wax?
Well, now here's the thing. Wax is much more costly because it takes bees much, much longer to build the wax than the honey. And besides, they won't even build the honey, make the honey, until they have wax to do it. So if you harvest the wax from them, you're knocking them back in time for a long, long time. So it's not surprising to pay $15, $18 or more a pound for wax. It's worth more. And this is an interesting thing about beeswax. Beeswax candles, like the crappy candles you buy from like Walmart, the paraffin stuff, that's a byproduct of petroleum. It is not good for your environment. When you burn that stuff, petroleum byproduct is going into your air and you're breathing it into your lungs and you're putting it into your environment. Beeswax is crazy because it lasts many, many, many times longer of a burn on the candle. It actually purifies the air. It's crazy. When beeswax is burned, it actually ozonates the air. So, it's a crazy thing. It's kind of like, I don't know, God had a good idea and said, hey, this is a good idea.
So have you ever harvested wax from your hive? Or
I have. I do. And when you harvest your honey, when it's time to harvest your honey, you're going to have what are called uncappings. Because you've got your frame, like goes in the beehive, right? You've got to get these cells open. That's wax. It's coated with wax. So you'll have some kind of a knife or some kind of a heated knife, and you cut it open, and then that starts to flow. The honey flows out. Well, you have all those wax cappings that you will then drain the honey out of, and you'll have that wax right there. I have once in a while harvested a frame or two, but I try not to do that very often unless I'm really in need of a lot of wax, just because it really sets the bees back. And you also get a lot of cappings from the wax cappings. But also, too, if you're when you're spinning your honey, when you're extracting the honey, sometimes the frames will fly apart and they'll just the centrifuge. So then you'll get the wax from that. And so I try not to take it from them. There are a lot of old timers who they actually like the honey in the wax. You can see it in some like high end, grocery stores and stuff like that, where you'll buy it and it's right in the and that sells for a lot of money. And there's a reason for it, because it's got the wax.
There you go. Well, listen, we are literally getting up to 37 and change on this video.
Oh, man, I'll tell you what, dude. Okay, I've decided. I'm going to tell you. We talked off camera about my story.
Yeah.
And I have not shared this publicly because it was embarrassing, and I've decided I don't care. It's awesome. So,
okay, so there's an exclusive right here, right now.
Right now. Okay, I'm a new beekeeper, right? And we had some hives in Kentucky at a remote location. Basically, my son had no fear of these damn things, and he's out there, and he's got his hand in there, and he's got no protective gear at all, and they're not messing with him. It was really, really cool. So I'm like, I don't think you should do that. Come on, we don't know what we're doing yet. And so later that morning, we're tending the hives. We're in there, and I realized something. I was like, okay, I got my shirt, it's like a shirt thing with your veil on, and I got my gloves on, and I just realized, wait a minute, I didn't cuff my jeans. I did not cuff my jeans. Velcro around the leg, keep it tight, nothing can crawl up. And all of a sudden I realize on my upper inner thigh, oh my God, oh my God, there's a bee there, and it's heading north. And I'm like, So at this moment, I'm going, and my brain's going, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Because if you smack that bee, it's going to sting you. Yeah. And I thought, I'm sitting there thinking, I'm going, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? If I hit it, it's going to sting me. If I don't, oh God! And it got me. And it got me. It got me right on the tip, dude.
Oh.
It is Scout's honor, true. It happened, and that wasn't even the worst. So I'm on the ground, going, oh, he got me, that kind of thing. But then, so we go home, and of course, I'm researching this online because I'm concerned. I'm concerned about my health. Is there something that's bad going to happen? Because let's just say that there's swelling that occurs, and it was an unnatural looking thing at this point. And I'm going, oh my God, I do not want to go to a doctor over this. And
No.
I'm like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? So I'm Googling, I'm going like, I got stung by a bee. And of course, every perverted 13-year-old in the world has commented on this very topic and has stated exactly what you should do when you are stung by a bee. And there's, even some illustrations that were not helpful for me because I really did get stung. It was not a fake thing. Right. So I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm feeling a little dizzy. I don't know what to do. I'm like, what's going to happen? So I called a lady at my church who is a nurse. Now, she is as gruff. She's an old, salty sea dog. Like, and she's awesome, and I love her. And I said, blah, blah, blah. I know this is going to sound stupid, and I know you're going to mock me forever, and I don't care because I'm concerned. I got stung by a bee. It's like 3 times the normal size or more. I'm concerned. What should I do? And she's laughing, just laughing. Whoa, hallelujah. The light's there. Got all excited. There goes my high-tech set. There it is right there. Right here, right now. So she's laughing her butt off at me. And at this point, my wife and I are at Walmart. And she says, well, are you feeling dizzy? And I said, well, yeah, I really am. She goes, oh, no. And she's like hamming it up. I forgot that I had taken some Benadryl. And she's making me think, like, I got to go in the emergency room. And they're going to have to cut this thing open. And so, long story short, right here, that guy. I'm the guy that was the myth. It really, really did happen. And I will never, ever, ever, ever forget to cuff my pant legs again.
Well, listen, I'm going to just say this, that you're still going to have a chance to edit this out post-production. So, I mean, if you have second thoughts about letting the world
I'm going there, dude. I'm going there. I'm that guy.
Right. Listen, one other question here before we get off. When you get stung, I've been told that the bees will release a pheromone which tells all the other bees to come at you. Did that thought go through your mind at that moment?
I wasn't thinking about anything except this really, really hurts a lot. And you
weren't thinking about the other 3,000 bees?
I think they had pity on me. I really do. See, the thing is, when a bee stings you, it dies. The stinger comes out and it literally rips its abdomen out. And so it's kind of like, they're like, I don't want to do this, but we're going in. So, no, I was not thinking of anything except, oh, my God.
Well, folks, you heard it here first. Hey, listen, I got a lot personally out of this conversation because I'm thinking about doing bees. I got 1,000 other things I have to do first, but really this is important to me. So the fact that I'm learning from you, the fact that there's so many other people out on YouTube that are willing to share their experiences.
One more thing, because you're listening to this, beekeeping, you do have to be attentive to it, but it does not take a ton of time. That's the thing. A lot of people go, how much time am I going to have to put in this? Realistically, if you go out and visit your hives once a week, you might only be in the hive for 10 or 15 minutes max. So it's not a big time commitment. I wanted to throw that in as you're considering for yourself.
I'm glad you said that because in the situation I'm in here, I'm in a subdivision. I'm positive there would be some major league issues with me having a hive in my backyard. I don't have a whole lot of room between houses, but I have that property and down the road that if I could go there once a week, can you go as far as 2 weeks between visits, 3 weeks, or is it?
No, you can. You are opening up yourself to a new set of problems. I would not do that without having a healthy hive. I wouldn't do that with a beginning hive, just because. If something happens, there are beetles that can get in there. There's all different kinds of mites and stuff. And you may find out about it when it's too late. If it was a beginning hive, you could do that with a strong hive. It's just going to mean you're probably, instead of 10, 15 minutes work, you maybe need to do 15, 20 minutes work when you get in there, scraping stuff and making sure everybody's happy. You can. Yes, you can. It's just a little bit of a time difference.
And what's the learning curve when you first went to your first meeting? What's the learning curve from the first meeting to the time that you're actually keeping a hive and doing it somewhat successfully?
I went to a 2-hour class, and probably about half of the time was question and answer. The guy went up and just blah, blah, blah. I bought literally the Beekeeping for Dummies book, the yellow and black book that you see, Beekeeping for Dummies. Still have it. It's probably right over there. And after that, we just bought hives, and we were up, and 6 months later, we had honey. The end.
Okay.
I mean, I've had some bad mistakes where, you screw things up, but YouTube is invaluable. I mean, there are so many knowledgeable beekeepers who've been doing this their whole life that any question you have is out there. It's all out there. There's answers for it all.
No, I was amazed after watching your video. I watched a few more, and it was suggested that you contact a local beekeeper club, and I thought, beekeeper club? I went on the internet, and sure enough, there's a bunch of meetings right around me. I had no idea the world even existed.
Well, I'll tell you what, the interesting thing about beekeepers is they're an odd group. They come from all walks of life. You can have attorneys, you can have farmers, you can have rock stars, but they're all very similar mindset. And what I found is they're generally salt of the earth type good people. They want to help you out. They want to educate you. And yes, get a part of a group. There's so much that you can learn. And a lot of them are really cool. They'll have barbecues and stuff and just have fun. And you meet new people that are like-minded. And it's in a very, very non-confrontive way.
How many of these people would you estimate that you've run into in your beekeeping escapades where you would say that they're of the homesteading or prepper mindset? Is it a high percentage?
80% or more.
Wow.
It's high.
Okay, so
it's high because they're already thinking like that. They're already, why do you keep bees? I mean, it's not just because I think bees are neat. You obviously want that honey for something. You obviously want that wax for something. You're not just doing it because you're a good guy, Right. And there are so many different uses for the wax and the honey and the propolis and all that kind of stuff, the royal jelly. So they're generally people who are already kind of switched on. They think independently. They think self-reliant way. Yeah.
So you can these bees not only pay for themselves, you can actually earn income off of them. I've heard of guys that'll actually rent out their hives to pollinate crops. Is that something?
That is a huge business. Okay. In California, there are several crops like almonds and there's several crops that are completely dependent. And yes, they will rent out thousands upon thousands of beehives. They put them on trucks and take them out there, and they get a per hive fee for them just to sit there. They literally sit there.
So do the small beehive, the small keepers, do they do anything like that? Or
I think that the farmers don't want to mess with anybody who doesn't have, a minimum. I don't know. I wouldn't even, I'd be guessing. I would say they wouldn't even mess with anybody with less than 100 hives.
All right. So we got the nutritional benefits are amazing from both the honey and the wax. You can, in addition to that, earn an income from it, and it helps pollinate your crops. So I got to imagine having a hive near your garden can only be a pretty symbiotic relationship, right?
Let's just say I get a lot more vegetables than anybody else in my area that I know that doesn't have hives nearby. It's math. It's absolute math.
Listen, man, this conversation, in addition to the fact that we learned about your embarrassing story, this conversation's been invaluable to me. I hope other people out there find it interesting. I hope they enjoy the exchange. I'm sure there's questions that I should have asked that I forgot to ask, so please put that in the comments. Let us know what your questions are. Brad's really good at getting back to answering those things. And you know what? Next time we get together, maybe we'll talk about chickens and goats. What do you say?
That's a double dog dare. I double dog dare you right then.
I double dog dare. All right, guys, don't forget to check